Since 2008, Sina Education Services has been uniting compliance and technology for the education industry. Today, Sina supports institutions of higher education, post-secondary schools, and organizations around the world to achieve their educational goals. Sina offers an array of client services in three major categories: compliance consulting, curriculum development, and EdLumina, our online education platform. Through our compliance consulting services, Sina ensures that your organization is on the right side of regulations. We assist with state licensing, the accreditation process, and even launching a new school within the U.S. We have years of regulatory experience for clients that are just starting out or have been long established. Sina also helps create what happens in the classroom, whether online, on campus, or a combination of both. Our curriculum development team produces educational content for all types of schools and educational needs. We can deliver curriculum for traditional classrooms, professional development, and even within our online immersive education platform, EdLumina. Over the years, EdLumina has grown from an admissions CRM platform designed specifically for education. Today, EdLumina also offers a student information system, an online course catalog with point of sale, and even immersive augmented and virtual reality training. But beyond the unique nature of services we offer in the education sector, it's our background, our experiences, and our relationships that set us apart from other firms. We have been involved in the education industry with every level of stakeholder, from students and faculty to school owners and regulators. At Sina Education Services, we are advancing the power of education around the world. Visit our website, sina.com, to see for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the latest webinar here from the ongoing webinar series from Sina Education Services. Today, modernizing your admissions strategy for success. Thank you for joining us. Settle in. We're looking forward to sharing a lot of extremely valuable information with you here today. Want to make some early introductions to kick things off. Myself, my name is Scott Shelton, Creative Director of Scholar House Media and longtime employee, proponent, and raving fan of Sina Education Services. And so also want to introduce to my left, Mr. Danny Ortiz, who joins me again, who is, again, co-host with me on the webinars and the SinaPodcast.com. How are you, Danny?
Doing good, buddy. How you doing?
Life is good, man.
Looking forward to it, man.
That's right.
Be a great conversation.
That's right. But the star of today's show is the VP of Admissions Solutions at Sina Education Services, the one and only Matt Schmoker. Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Hey guys, good afternoon. How you doing?
Very
good,
good,
man.
Very
Looking forward
good.
to hearing and getting into this. This is going to be good today.
Yeah,
That's right.
So
That's right. So this is sort of the second part of an ongoing admission series with you, right, Matt? And you've got a ton of experience in this realm, in this arena of education, student enrollment, all of these types of like best practices to help schools with that number one goal on the front end, which is enrolling students. So Matt, for those that maybe missed the last webinar, which is available to be watched if you missed it at Sina.com, Matt, just give them a quick overview of who you are and what you do in this role.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been blessed to have been in higher education, primarily admissions training, enrollment management, school operations for a little over 28 years now. And my sole focus is really helping schools optimize their admissions experience for the students so that we can maximize conversion of not just lead to enrollment, but obviously, that lead to start. So if I can help a school build value, relationship, and experience that we know is going to transform that lead into ultimately an attendant student, that's my number one priority to all the schools we get to work with.
That's great. And so the last time we spoke, we gave sort of a general overview, right, of what admissions solutions really means at Sina. But today we're taking that to this next step, right? We are talking about what it takes to reach today's students, right? And some of the best practices strategy and some of, say, like the resources that it takes to engage these new students in what is oftentimes a highly competitive field, right, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think schools today that want to remain competitive and really better connect and engage today's student are looking at modernizing their approach. And modernization is a lot of different things. I mean, really, it's a multi layered conversation. But what we're going to focus on today is number one, to modernize your admissions strategy. You really need to understand who your student is today, the way they think, the way they view themselves, the way they view higher education, the way they view the process. So we're going to dive into that and really look at what the data tells us about today's student. Then we're going to look at some of the tech tools that schools are investing in from a marketing standpoint and from an admissions operations perspective. And then finally, and this is a huge topic of conversation today, how do you engage them? How do you keep them interested? How do you keep them motivated to work through all the hurdles that it takes to get enrolled and to start? So we're just going to talk about a few of those items today, but it is a multi-layer conversation and something that we have a lot of experience in doing to help those schools optimize their experience, modernize it so they can appeal to more students and maximize conversions.
So Matt, let's start with the question. How do you recognize and identify those students? So if I'm starting from the ground up, and maybe I do have some students already, right, in my school, some of them are engaged, some of them we're not engaged in.
Mhm.
How do you add some new tools, right? And I've been at this for 2 or 3 years, and I've been only been able to reach 10 to 20%, right? How do you take that 20% to 40 and 50%? What do I have to do to identify and start that engagement process?
Yeah, I think some of the things we're going to talk about here in a moment, Danny, will help with that. But one of the things I'm really excited about is we created a student profiler system that can allow an educator, an admissions professional, a school leader, or any employee to understand which of the 5 student types that they're working with. So this profiler, with a little over 90% precision, can identify, is that student a driver, an inspirer, an adventurer, a processor, or a dreamer. And they all have multiple pieces to them, their personality and their characteristics that can help you better understand what motivates them, what are their communication strategies, how do they like to be taught, what environment do they want to be taught in. And from an admission standpoint, if you understand those 5 student types, you know how to better engage and promote the school, the industry, and continue to motivate them through all the steps necessary to getting them started. And so it's a really exciting tool that we can offer. Just last week, I was in Mississippi working with a school system, working with their educators, helping them understand what educator type they are, and then helping them better understand who the 5 student types are and how to recognize those 5 student types so they can be more effective educators in the classroom, which is going to be something we're going to talk about in a moment. Now that school wants to take it a next step and engage their admissions team so that they can learn how to identify the 5 student types so they can be more effective in the admissions experience that they offer.
Matt, before we move on, let's just go an elementary level of how do I get a hold of that? How do I get a hold of profiling my 5 students? Where do I go to? What website do I plug in? I'm just into this. I saw it on LinkedIn and I want to get involved. So, what is the elementary version of me going in and getting this? Because I'm excited and I want to learn what type of students I have.
Yeah, it's a really exciting tool. It took over 9 years of research to build this, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with everyone. The best way, Danny, is just give me a call, send me an email. I'm going to have my contact information up here in just a little bit. Go to Ciena.com, go to the Admission Solutions page, fill out the form. That inquiry will come straight to me, and I'd be happy to sit down and walk through what that looks like, what the tool is, and how you can invest in that and bring it over to your school.
That's awesome. So, Matt, you have been a keynote speaker on admissions for a number of years. And I think, in fact, what we will be talking about today, you actually touched on recently at like the NACTI conference, right?
Yeah, this was a topic that was really important to the attendees there. Is you'd think that today all schools would be very modern in their approach and their strategy and their operations and all of those sort of things. but unfortunately they're not. And sometimes it's just not knowing what you don't know. And so there were a lot of schools there, from either the mom and pop, the small career training school, to community colleges, to universities, that really enjoyed this conversation. There were a lot of aha moments they had learning about the mindset of today's students. Some of those things were just a sort of confirmation of what they already knew, and some were light bulb moments when they realized, no wonder why we're not able to connect and engage with our students. We may not completely understand how they view themselves in higher education. So it was well received. We got a lot of great feedback from the participants, and based on some of that feedback, they're looking at what our services could do to really help them modernize and optimize their strategies.
That's great. So, Matt,
I want to
let's
talk about these students.
let's dive
Let's
in.
let's dive into the students, because in my brain, I'm already thinking of how do I modernize this thing? How do I go from a non-modern school to a modern school? But I know we want to dive into the students conversation and then the tech conversation. So let's dive into the students conversation.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to share my screen here so that we can work through the webinar portion of this. So just
That's
hold
great.
tight for a quick second, everyone. Try to not
Absolutely.
make awkward
And,
silence.
and as Matt gets that rolling, just want to remind all of our attendees, one, thank you again for your attendance. Um, but two, you'll notice in the chat, you can always toss out any
Any
additional questions.
questions?
Yeah.
Yes, we want
So,
that. We want your response. We want your questions.
yep. Yeah,
And if
that's
we
right.
can't answer it now, we'll answer it later. But we definitely want to engage with you with these questions. So good point, Scott.
Exactly. So, all right, Matt, talk to us again. The main title: Modernizing Your Admission Strategy for Success.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Scott. And just to make sure everybody can see this clearly, it's coming through good on your guys'
Absolutely.
end.
Looking good.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, and I echo the same sentiment, Scott. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their extremely busy schedules to be a part of our conversation today. This is the time of year where the focus is on fall enrollment, one of the biggest enrollment seasons of the year. So to take time out of that hectic schedule of yours and join us in this conversation, I really do appreciate the time and the opportunity to connect with you. So, yes, what we're going to do is talk about this massive topic of modernizing your admission strategy. And although this could be a multifaceted presentation, we're just going to focus on a few things lightly. Number one, better understanding today's student. Number two, what are some of the tech tools in marketing and admissions schools are making big investments in? And then finally, best engagement practices to really create that immersive, unforgettable experience for your prospects so they continue moving through the admissions process. What I want to start with, though, is a conversation about today's student, because I think a lot of us who work with students on a day-to-day basis believe we really understand them, and I do believe that to be true. So some of the things we're going to talk about today will confirm what you already know or what your experience is, or it may shed light on other areas that you may not have been too familiar with, that might help you maybe relook at your approach, your strategy, the way you connect and engage with these students, based upon what we're going to talk about today. For starters, I want to preface by saying what I'm going to show you and what we're going to talk about here is not coming out of thin air, and it is not in my opinion. This is coming from over 9 years of research that we did, dating back to the beginning of 2012 and running through near mid 2021. So even the height of COVID is influencing some of the data we're going to talk about. And I am fascinated by research to learn as much as possible so we can provide the best solutions and the best strategies for the schools that we worked with. And in this 9 year study, it started as a mystery shop from a client that asked us to shop a competing school. And when we did, we were amazed at how toxic the culture was for that student population. So we wanted to better understand, what role does the student play, the staff play on creating the best culture and experience all around. And so what we did is we launched this project to better determine, what does the market say about today's student? What are their motivations? What are some of the leading trends and behaviors that they had? Like what motivates them to take action? What are some of those key influencers that are driving their decision? What's the best contact method on the front end so you can have the best contact rate to set yourself up for more scheduled appointments and tours? And what we also wanted to understand is, where's the disconnect come from between student and admissions professional, or student and educator? And finally, Danny, to your question earlier, we were able to uncover communication and learning styles, which helped us uncover there are 5 types of students that exist in every school that we know of. So we went forward in with that being sort of the direction we wanted to take. Now we worked with 167 different colleges and universities in 4 countries throughout this research. And when you hear that, a lot of people will say, well, why not just focus on the US? Because Italy's different from Puerto Rico or Canada and so on. What's interesting is, although culturally the countries might be a bit different, the student's mindset is almost absolutely the same. So, regardless of country, the student's mindset about themselves and how they view higher education remained nearly identical. So here was the breakdown in terms of our involvement with these 4 countries. Obviously, most of the work that we did was within the United States and then Canada, and as you see, Puerto Rico and Italy. And what we wanted to do is create an even playing field. So we worked with schools in urban and rural, competitive, non-competitive markets. Now, what was fascinating about this is that we worked with tens of thousands of admissions professionals and educators, several thousand leaders, but the most robust sampling size in this research was the students. In over 9 years, we studied over 900,000 new student inquiries. And from all those new inquiries, we had direct contact with over 21.5% of them. So that equates to a little over 194,000 students, ranging in age from 18 to 60 years old. So what we can say is the 4 major generations are represented in this research. And yes, baby boomers are still going back to school for their own personal development. And yes, some are going back to school for entirely new careers because they don't want to stay at home for the rest of their retirement. They want to go off and contribute in other ways. And so what we're going to talk about today really involves the 4 major generations, but the 2 most prominent are millennials and Gen Z. And it's really important that we involve millennials. I hear so many marketing specialists or admission specialists or so-called gurus focus on Gen Z. But for many of the career training schools that we work with, Gen Z is an important population, but the career changer market really is the bread and butter. And most of those career changers are coming from the millennial generation and certainly my proud generation, Gen X. And so here were some of the things that we uncovered. And Danny and Scott, I'm going to ask you some questions, get your thoughts on this.
Great.
But from all those students we worked with, here were just a few of the most popular realizations we came to in terms of their mindset. For starters, over 70% of the students have this sort of pessimism or skepticism about higher education. Why do you think that is? Or what do you think they're pessimistic about? What's your kind of your gut tell you about that?
My gut would be initially, I would say student debt, right? The cost of education, and the return on that investment, right? What does it take to, time wise, right? The length of a 4-year degree versus the shorter right to a career, kind of a track, um, and that overall debt, right?
Yeah, my gut, you're right. I mean, ROI is important, cost is important. I think also my gut tells me leadership, like
Hmm.
what school they're going to be involved, what leadership is going to be, what is their role into my development. Because
Hmm.
I think you said something to me that sparked everything. Culture is everything. So not only am I getting an education, what kind of culture and what responsibility does that leadership have in that culture, and how am I going to be shaped by that, right? Because whatever I'm going to be shaped with, then I'm going to disseminate everywhere I go.
That's right. That's right. All the above, gentlemen. You're right. One of the key factors was, why do I need to go 6 figures in debt to launch a career that I may not even be able to pay back that debt? The other is, why do I need to go to school for 4 or 5 years to launch a career, to learn all these things that either don't have relationship to the career or I'm not even interested in? And what's interesting is COVID obviously exposed a lot of industries. And one of those was higher education, that you had schools that were pivoting to virtual, but still charging the same tuition rate as if they were attending campus. And so a lot of students looked at this and said, to your point, Danny, where is the return on investment? Do I really need to go that much into debt for the student experience? Probably not necessary. And so a lot of students have this sort of mindset about it. And even taking it a step further, some believe there are certain careers that I could just learn by watching a bunch of videos on YouTube and replicating it, and I could be a successful professional. So there is that question out there by many students. What's the value of higher education? They understand the necessity of it, but what style of higher education is really what they're questioning today. And one of the reasons why career training schools are a far more popular option today than they may have been just several years ago. Here's another interesting point we uncovered. For most prospects, in particular the career changers, a majority of them had been interested in their field of choice, their career field, at least 7 years before they inquired. So, for example, a cosmetology student who's meeting with an admissions professional, they have been thinking about cosmetology or hairstyling for at least 7 years before they inquired. A welder who may have had multiple other careers had been thinking about that trade either as a hobby or another passion of sorts before he or she inquired and asked for more information. And in a moment, I'm going to explain why it takes them so long to inquire. But the smaller part of that portion, we're just beginning to explore their options. And that was primarily, your high school students. We talk a lot about engagement, immediate contact, the contact rate, and all those sort of things. What students told us is they want that instant gratification, they want that immediate response, but here's the catch. They do not want to communicate with AI. AI is so popular right now. It is the hot topic. Do we use it? Do we not? What level do we use it in? What place does it have in our schools and in our admissions practices? And although it's great at those autoresponders and being able to communicate on our behalf, what students are telling us is, I want you to engage with me, but I don't want to engage with an algorithm. I don't want to talk to a computer program. And so that's a really interesting point that we need to be mindful of, that students do not necessarily want to engage with AI. The other thing that was interesting, especially from the career changer market, so that being millennials and Gen X, is that they are very dissatisfied at work. They are very frustrated. They are very insecure. They feel stuck. And so they are contemplating making a shift towards a completely different occupation, which would require some training, of course. And so there's a lot of dissatisfaction that employees have in the workplace, where now they're considering an alternative career, which is where our schools play such a vital role. And then nearly 60% feel like they're ready to make a change. So with all that said, here's my question to you, gentlemen, and to the audience. I mentioned a minute ago that it takes several years before they actually inquire. We ask them that. What causes you to delay pursuing something you're so interested in? We talk a lot about passion and motivation and inspiration and all those things, but what's your thought on why it takes people so long to actually inquire?
And my first initial thought, Matt, is fear, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of the cost, fear of changing careers. Like there's a gap, between shifting from this place to another. I got bills, I got car payments, I have mortgages, right? And so my first initial thing, Matt, will be fear of how do I do it? When is the right time to do it? Is it going to cost me? How much is it going to cost me? And I'm not just talking about dollars in the next career training I'm going into. How much am I going to lose while I'm transitioning from one end to the other, right? Because there is a transition period to any of this, right? And so if I pick up today and I'm a fireman and I want to be a nurse, there's going to be some lagging, and right. So how do I make up for the time lost and for the earning income lost into that? So my first initial thought would be fear.
Okay, excellent point, Danny. What's interesting about your answer, and you're certainly right in a lot of key areas. Normally, when we ask this question of groups, they'll also say fear, but their definition of fear is the fear of the unknown, that I'll fail at it, or what happens if I graduate, or what happens if I don't, or will I succeed in my career? They're thinking about everything afterwards. What's interesting about your answer, Danny, and you're spot on, is the fear factor we're actually referring to is everything before
So
attending
good.
school. Yeah. What they are afraid of is making the change. And here are the other leading factors of their fear. They don't feel they're smart enough. They don't feel they'll be accepted. They fear that they can't afford it. Or to your point, Danny, I may have to cut my job out altogether to go to school. How could I possibly afford to do that and be able to take care of my family? And so the fear isn't so much what happens during school and after they graduate. It's everything leading up to it. So what we can, sort of conclude from this is our prospects are very fear based right now. And
Mm.
what comes with that is a tremendous amount of insecurity that we need to be respectful of and be cognizant of in our approach, from marketing to the experience we create and the service that we offer in admissions and financial aid, and all the way through that admissions funnel.
So, Matt, I have a question in this. Is just
Yeah.
as we're having this conversation. So, and look at it as fear. Is it imperative then for us to understand the process of time, right? Because a lot of folks don't have the time, right? So, part of the fear is the fear of time, right? How quick is this school going to be? It's going to be 6 months. It's going to be 3 months. Do you talk to a lot of schools about that timing and how quick can I get? Because I know most folks just like educate me, assess me, reward me, right? I don't have time to waste in between those. Do you see that as a conversation within not only students but also administrations of schools? I'm curious in having this conversation, where does time fit into this?
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's two areas here. So one is the amount of additional time an admissions department has to invest in that prospect to actually build up their confidence to move through the process, or keep them motivated, engaged, and urgent to keep moving through every step of the way, because there are going to be hurdles. We know that. So the first part of that answer is there's more time devoted today to that. At the same time, what we also know about a lot of students that or prospects we work with is they procrastinate, and much of that because of fear. So what we have to do is respect the line of how much do we create urgency before it becomes too aggressive, and
That's
how
good.
much time do we give that prospect to come to their own decisions before we start employing some strategies where we're giving them those nudges to keep moving through the process. It's one of the reasons why the enrollment cycle for many schools today has actually been extended a little while longer than the tip, what it used to be years ago, where you could meet somebody, enroll them same day or in a couple of weeks. That cycle is longer now, and much of that is driven by the fear these students have about next steps.
That's so good.
Yeah. So we talked about there are those 5 student types, and we can certainly, provide tools to help you identify those types. And it's imperative that we understand those learners, whether we're in admissions or in the education side of the school. And by being able to connect, engage, and appeal to them, we will be very successful and they'll have a great experience. However, from this research we did, there were some pretty alarming statistics that came out about how students feel we're doing in terms of our job. So, one example is not even 40% of today's students feel like their educators understand them, don't get where I come from, don't get
Mm.
who I am as an individual, don't get what I value, and all those sort of pieces. Then take it a step further that not even 50% of students today feel like they're engaged in the classroom. And the statistic that actually breaks my heart the most, and COVID did influence this just a little bit, not as much as you would think, is that, again, not even half of today's students even feel hopeful for the future. And,
Mm.
and where some of that is coming from is either a breakdown of industries altogether, that those opportunities don't exist anymore. Those industries have been dramatically impacted by COVID or the recession or whatever economic instability there might be. But where this is also coming from, and I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say this to the audience, it's the breakdown of the family. That we know that many of the people that we connect with in the admissions arena and in the classroom don't come from, not all, okay, but so many don't come from very supportive homes. There's a breakdown there. So unfortunately, they don't feel like they even have the emotional support to be able to pursue these careers, which is one of the reasons why admissions and being an educator is so draining, because it's the emotional investment you have to give to every student, whether they're prospect or attending school, so that they are motivated to move through the process. They are motivated to come to class. They are motivated to be successful, and they are motivated to have hope for what they want to pursue in their new occupation and career. So my personal goal, not just professional but personal, is that everything that I do, that I dedicate myself to doing, whether it's training, devising solutions, strategies, systems, and all those things, is to help a school improve all these statistics. My hope is, as we continue this research, that our influence at Siena has helped schools improve these statistics, where more students feel like they're understood, they're engaged, and have more hope for their future.
Matt, with this statistic that you just laid out, does that highlight the importance of something that you mentioned earlier, which is creating a culture? Because if these students are feeling this way, the 39 students felt the educators didn't understand them, right? The engagement in the classroom, right? Not hopelessness, right? And you're saying a lot of this is the breakdown of the family. Much more does that highlight the importance of that leadership of the school, whatever career training that they are, to create a culture to hopefully help these numbers change because of the culture that you're creating. Because I mean, we all know this, Matt, to be true. And Scott, everyone wants to be a part of something, right? And that's part of, hopefully you can have it when you come from home, from a part of something. And if you don't, going into something, right? Going into something bigger than yourself is so important. Talk to me. Does that highlight the need more and more for these schools to create these cultures that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Danny, in a couple of slides, you're going to see what role culture plays in being a lead influencer of a student's decision to attend whichever school it might be. But you're right, culture is there. As a matter of fact, although we're not going to share the slide with this, we were able to uncover the top 15 words and phrases that create the most engagement and disengagement. And one of those 15 words is culture. It
Wow.
is a leading influencer today. And, we talk about that in the school, but it's no different in the workplace today. In fact, pick up any article you want, and we know how competitive the workforce is right now, where employees have their pick of where they want to go. And one of the things that they are weighing is company culture.
That's so
So it's not just important in the corporate world or the workforce, it's equally, if not even more important, in the academic area of their experience as well. So one of the other things we were able to uncover from a lot of these surveys, and when I mentioned, how many students we had engagement with, it was through surveys, town halls, roundtable discussions, one-on-one conversations, and all those sort of things. And we asked them, if you don't have a lot of hope for the future, what are you motivated by then? So, what drives you? What are you looking to attain in life? And what I'm going to share with you, it should be talked about in every realm of a school today. And I'll explain how in just a moment. But let me ask you guys, what do you believe today's top student drivers are that they're most motivated to attain?
That's a great question. I'll take a couple stabs. I think students are really concerned with career outcomes and outcomes in general. I think that they're extremely wise. On now more like what am I going to get out of this? So I think I would say one of the top five drivers that they're motivated to attain would be career satisfaction, maybe.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Great.
that's a great point, Scott. And then also how that career is going to play in for humanity itself. I think a lot of them have this social conscious to them, especially the student today. They feel responsible, right? Is my career going to add into the health of our social construct, right? So I
Mhm.
think meaningful work, deeper work, other than, and I think first, can I get a job? Two, is
Mhm.
if I do get this job, is it going to be meaningful? It's going to be meaningful not only to me, but meaningful to society. As a lot of students I always talk to, I got kids this age. I got college students right in my house, and so most of the conversations I have with them is this meaningful, right? I want to do something bigger than myself. I want to touch humanity. I want to work on the planet. I want to work on. There's so many things that they got that their brains are working through. So for me, that's the stuff that just kicks out in my mind.
Yeah, those things are certainly listed here. They're in different categories, but everything you gentlemen just shared is definitely part of what they're motivated by. Just we called it something different, but you'll see here in a moment. So, of these five key drivers they are most motivated to attain, they were security, stability, fulfillment, confidence, and here you go, Danny. This is speaking directly to what you just mentioned, purpose.
Hmm.
Now, let me ask you this. So what? Like, how does now knowing this? I've literally just told you, both admissions or educators, exactly the top five things your student wants to attain the most. What's interesting is somewhere along the way, some, not all, admissions professionals or educators felt like their needs and wants are different from their students, when in reality, I would argue we all want these five things. So, how does knowing this now translate into helping you do your job better in admissions or as a leader or in education?
I think it's Yeah, I think it speaks to overcoming obstacles, right? I
Hmm.
think I think getting back to the why have they been thinking about this like long 7-year process, right? And
Yeah,
it speaks to um, you know, you know, it 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 helps your admissions reps to sort of identify how am I going to overcome all these hurdles, these objections, right?
that's right. That's right. And so when they are bogged down or they are hitting that wall or they are overcome by obstacles, concerns, all of those things, you can refer back to these five motivators, these five drivers that we know are really inspiring them to move forward. The other thing about it is that these five words have a lot of power. So if I'm the admissions professional, rather than the prospect sharing this with me, If I already know this, I'm infusing these words in my conversation. As an example,
Good.
I know, Danny, one of the things that you're so motivated to attain in life is security. And this school can be a vehicle to take you from where you're at right now to helping you attain security, stability, fulfillment, confidence, and purpose. If I'm the one that's talking about that before the prospect does, what do you think immediately happens from a rapport standpoint, from a connection and engagement standpoint? How does that benefit your ability to reach and do your job even more effectively?
Well, the student feels known at that moment, right?
Right.
You feel like you know me without me telling you. You didn't ask me about me, but you already told me about me. And that automatically gives me a rapport for you because now you're making it about me and not about you.
That's right.
Which
That's right.
which which is what happens a lot in admissions, right? We make it a more about what we're selling instead of more about the students. And I think when we transition from what I'm selling to student base, that student feels compelled now, right? To not only buy what you're giving them, but like I want to be a part of this because you care more about me than what you're trying to give me. And I think that's translated in what you just told me.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And what the student tells us is if my admissions rep, my financial aid rep, or my educator is sharing this with me, it tells me they understand where I'm at in life. And that is a huge unifier. As a matter of fact, what we know is that when people share the same belief and value systems, loyalty is created. And
Yes.
so if I share with that student, I know what these things mean to them and how important they are, and this school can help them achieve that. Or if an educator in the classroom begins his or her class, the beginning of that student's experience, saying, my number one priority isn't just helping you attain the skills necessary to be successful in a career, it is to help you learn how you can attain these five things that I know are so important to you. And so, my point being, schools today that are infusing this language in every aspect of what they do does impact not only their ability to be more successful working with that student, but Danny, getting back to what you were talking about with culture, it dramatically transforms the culture of that school much for the better and more supportive for that student.
Matt,
Now,
can I say
yeah,
one thing real quick there? Because you used the word understanding, and I do agree with that. That not only do they feel understood, but I want to add a word here that I think
sure.
is such an important word for all of us is that you care, right?
There you
The power in caring for another human,
go.
the
Mhm.
power of feeling cared for, Scott, right? Our
Mhm.
children feel it without them even knowing, and they respond to us as children without that. Like, if they could articulate it, they can probably use one word: my dad cares, my mom cares, right? So when the student can say that about a school, right? Not only do they understand, but they care about me. Now, only am I attached with them from a loyal point of view, now I'm attached from an emotional point of view, right? Now my loyalty attaches my emotions to this, and now I'm invested emotionally into that. You care about me emotionally. I'm in, and I can't be convinced otherwise.
That's right. That acknowledgement, Danny, is extremely important in today's world, especially if we know these students don't feel hopeful, they're struggling with their motivation and all those pieces. If we can implore them to move through that process by acknowledging we know what's important to them, showing that we care and all those pieces, we will be more effective. I remember several years ago, I got to present at the Disney Institute, and you learn a lot of the Waltisms, the Disneyisms, and everything. And one of their philosophies is whatever is important to my guest is more important to me.
Mm,
And so, if I demonstrate whatever is driving that student is more important to me, what does that show about what my philosophy is in helping guide that student through the process or creating the best experience for them? Now, I'll share this. Some of what we're talking about years ago, there was an era rather in this industry that said fluff doesn't sell. And
Mm.
some of what we're talking about was believed that you don't need what we're talking about to be effective in the role. I would argue that maybe it wasn't as necessary as it is today because the mindset of today's student dramatically is influencing how we need to approach them, and we need to evolve our process and be more modern in our approach. And it begins with our attitude and our understanding of who they really are, as well as what they expect from us. And so we were able to identify additional expectations that students have of their school, and we were able to identify them into two categories. You have your support me students, and then you have your show me students, and they came with a lot of expectations. I'm just going to share the top four in each of these categories. So we'll start with the support me student. What do you gentlemen believe some of their top expectations are of us and the school that they attend?
Matt, are you referring to the show me students or the
Oh, I'm
support
sorry,
me?
the support me student. Yeah.
Support me.
What do you think?
That's a great question. I think I,
I would say my academics, right? As I'm going to the class, I better have a teacher that understands, that's letting me understand what I'm learning, how I'm learning, and again, I said it earlier. It's educate me, assess me, and then reward me. I think if that's in play, then I'm being supportive. But if I feel like I don't know what the heck I'm learning, or that academia level is not there for me to understand what I'm learning, I think that the student wants to be supported in that area.
mhm.
Very good. Very good. Definitely a key attribute. And like I said, there are several in this category. And so to narrow down to just to four was really difficult. But here were some of the leading trends we found. So, one, this is the student that literally needs their hand held every step of the way. Every facet of their educational experience, they need more support than maybe other students do. Also, and this is really important for admissions professionals to understand, this support me student doesn't have the confidence to make the best career path decision for themselves. And so it's incumbent upon admissions professionals to provide more education about the program, the industry, the school, the level of support they're going to receive, the benefits of all those things, so that that student can come to the realization on their own that they're making the best career planning decision for themselves. But that comes from an additional amount of work that admissions may have to do with that support me student. This is also the student that requires a lot more emotion poured into them. Some will jokingly refer to the support me student as their high maintenance student. This is the student that after your admissions appointment, you're drained. You need to take like a 30-minute break. You need a cup of coffee or whatever because of all the emotion you poured into them. But they need more motivation to stay on track through that process and through school. And this last one will not seem fair to us, but it is an expectation they have. And that is they want to be in a high connectivity environment. And what that means is no matter where I am, what's going on, I expect someone will be accessible to me. Now, that's a
Mhm.
lot to demand. uh, but that's what they mean by high connectivity environment. Relationship is extremely important to them, but their expectation is somebody is accessible to me no matter what it is and where I'm at or what time of day it is, and those sort of things. Um, Now, in contrast, you have your show me student. What do you gentlemen believe that were some of the key expectations that a show me student has?
I would say testimonial, right, from my ROI. Like, show me what my ROI here, and show me what other students have accomplished that. And I think also probably a big thing right now is job placement, right? Like, is this career path, is this career training are going to land into a job placement show me where you place other students into this career path, whether it's nursing or you said it earlier, welding. Do you have accessible work in the welding field,
Yeah.
and are other employees working with you, so that way if I know that I have an end goal, I'll go through all of it just to get there.
And I
Yeah.
think that, a lot of these types of students, and especially in career training, these are those hands-on students,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
mean, these are the students that show me means like literally show me how to do this, how to get, down this path. But that also ties into, the type of education that they learn, really, um, and that is hands-on.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right, Scott. Hands on is going to appear here on a minute. And Danny, when you talk about student outcomes, in a moment, when we talk about the top 10 influencers that lead them to decide what school to attend, student outcomes, the ROI is one of them. But it's also their way of holding us accountable to outcomes, which is going to be a huge driver for them. You'll see that in a second. This student expects the straightest path to their career. Or, in other words, I only want to learn what I need to learn to launch my career, nothing else. I'm
Right.
fascinated by being a welder. I don't need to learn biology, right? Not interested in it. Now, here's where you start to see a little bit of contrast between these two groups. This student, and it sounds kind of it sounds almost counterintuitive when I say this student knows they need accountability, because what student wants accountability? They push back to all of it, they resist it. But these students know they need it. But this student is not afraid to hold you accountable as well. I'll give you an example. I saw this observing an admissions appointment several years ago. The admissions rep was talking to a show me student, and she was talking about student outcomes, graduation rate, placement rate, all those sort of things. And she was doing a phenomenal job. The prospect picks up his phone and is staring at his phone, not paying attention to the rep as she was continuing to talk. And it kind of paranoid her for a moment. So she stopped the conversation and asked the student, "Is everything okay?" And the student said, "Everything's fine. I'm just looking to make sure you weren't BSing me." So, in other words, show me the proof, show me the evidence. If you're going to make a claim, you better back it up with facts. That is the student. And to your point, Scott, you're right. This is the student that is hands-on, the hands-on learner. This is the best way they learn a new skill. Now, there are two things that bridge these two. One is their Achilles heel. One is something they want most in a school. The first is they both struggle with low self-esteem. Even the baby boomers, some will say, a baby boomer is suffering from low self-esteem. I thought they had all this experience and all these sort of things. Yeah, they absolutely do, because what they're saying is, I can't compete against somebody who's a fraction of my age. Who would hire me? I can't be good at this. So self-esteem is a big Achilles heel of theirs. But the other thing that bridges the gap between these two is something they want most from a school. It is to belong. And I've known a lot of, admissions professionals or so-called admissions gurus who try to, make admissions cute and try to present all these new strategies and all those sort of things. At the end of the day, this is a relationship-based business. And what they are driven by in terms of decision making is, once they believe for themselves, this school is where I belong, you're done. Everything else is just logistics at that point. But once they come to the conclusion, based on what you've shared with them, how you've educated them, the experience you provided, once they come to that conclusion, this school is where I belong, you've really satisfied a huge need of theirs. Now, I keep talking about influencers, and we were able to uncover the top 10. And again, there are many, but we uncovered the top 10 that leads to their decision as to what school to attend. And we'll start with number 10 and we'll work our way all the way up to number one. But Danny
Yeah,
and Scott, what are your guesses?
yeah, Matt, and I'm gonna guess a couple, but also just as we are kind of being mindful of our time today, we've been covering a lot of great information, and I know that as we kind of work through the top 10 influences and 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 touching on how do we influence those, right? Um, on down the road, we were also hoping to talk about investing in tech tools and engagement strategies. So I do want to carve out some time for those, Matt. But I'm also thinking that this might be a two-part
That's
webinar.
what we're thinking. This might be a two-part. We may have to do the tech, Matt, another time. I mean, you tell me your
Sure.
thoughts on it, but because I want to get these 10 influence things out. But yeah, we definitely running into about an hour right now at this time.
Yeah, let's do that, gentlemen. It's been a good conversation. We'll wrap up our focus on the students, and then in our next webinar podcast next month, we'll pick it up from here and talk about investments in tech and best engagement strategies using technology. How's that sound?
I love it.
Okay,
Perfect.
Yeah.
great, great. So just a couple more minutes, and I appreciate everybody staying on and continuing to engage with us today. Um, Gentlemen, what do you think? What are those top influencers?
Well, I think a lot of it ties into, for me, I think what we've been hearing along the way, which is you're speaking to purpose, you're speaking to why they would want to be there and showing them and supporting them. So I think that speaks to issues of culture. Just what's your school culture? Do you have a good school culture? And are you able to really kind of tie those students into it? And then I think,
I'm gonna hone in on ROI. You know
do
what I
it.
mean?
Do it again.
Because I mean that's gonna be the biggest thing. Like how do what am I gonna get out of this? I
Mhm.
think that also timing, right? And you
Mhm.
said something about this last,
Timing and
group of students,
scheduling,
right?
yeah.
Like what's the easiest and fastest way, not easy, fastest way to that career, right? A
Mhm.
lot of students are looking at money wise, right? If I'm spending this amount of money and this amount of time, how quick can I get there? How cheap can I get there? And it's going to give me the greatest outcome. So if I'm looking
Mhm.
at all the schools, right? And I'm looking at this school is 2 years, this school is 3 years, this school is 5 years, but this 6 months program, that's going to lead me into data analytics for a medical field for 6 months, and I get a job that's $80,000. I'm probably going to choose that if it's only $2,000. Probably going to choose that more than the 3 year medical assistance over here. So I think those are the number one things that stick out to me.
Yeah, those influencers are on there, and pay attention at where they rank in this list. Number 10 were parents or their support system. Number 9 was the overall information they're gathering and the experience they're having in the admissions process, which includes their website or the website they're visiting, as well as social media. Proximity is really important to them. So that includes, not only the distance I have to travel, but might remote learning or hybrid learning be an option for me today? That's in more demand than ever before. There you go, Danny. There's your ROI, the outcomes. What do I gain? What are your outcomes as a school? These are major value propositions that must be talked about in the admissions experience. And number 6, engagement, which we will talk about. And I think it's a great suggestion, Scott, in our next segment next month. How do you
Mhm.
stay connected with them all the way through the process? Now, here were the top 5. Number 5 is affordability. Remember, I was referring back to those top 15 words and phrases that create the most engagement.
Yeah.
The word affordability is one of those. So, as an example, language means everything in this experience. Admissions professionals need to remove from their vocabulary the words cost,
Mhm.
expense, and those things and focus on investment and affordability. That's what the student really cares about. The fourth is the relationship they have with their advisors or the service they're receiving. Number 3 were scheduling options. A school I worked with just recently actually has a schedule called Mommy Time. understanding that today's student is both a parent and a full-time employee and potentially a full-time student. So what scheduling options does a school provide that meets the lifestyle demands of that student? The second is reputation, not brand. What we uncovered is the tail end of the millennial generation and Gen Z are not brand loyal, but what is important to them is what does the school stand for? What social what importance is they place on social issues of today? Do they align with mine? And then lastly, we've been talking a lot about it. The number one word and phrase and number one influencer is in fact the culture of that school. And so talking about it, letting them experience it, creating the best student experience, which is a workshop that we provide so that you can enhance the culture of your school. These are the top things that students are motivated by. But look at what's not on that list. Teachers are not on that list. School counselors not on that list. Parents are number 10. So you see what's really important to a student today and what drives them. And the last thing we'll talk about here before we let anybody go is the other influencers are the reviews that they're looking at to determine if they want to take a next step in the process. So Danny Scott will play a little game to wrap things up.
Perfect. All right.
Let's go.
How many reviews on average does a prospect look at when determining to inquire?
Well, we're shooting out of the dark, so I'm going to say 10.
Okay. All right. Survey says 8. Okay. So they're reading an average of 8 just to decide to inquire. So they've inquired. They've talked to an admissions representative. They've scheduled that first appointment. How many reviews are they reading now to decide if they even want to show up for that appointment?
Scott, that's you.
I'm going to go a little lower here. I'm going to go a little lower because it took, you said 8 to fill out that lead form, right?
Right.
All right, I'm going to go 6 to show.
Okay. He's real close. It's another 5.
We both have been close.
All right, I'll take it.
We think that we do this for.
So now they attend their admissions appointment. They have a great experience, and now the conversation comes up about enrolling. How many more reviews are they reading just to decide if they want to enroll?
I would say about the same. I would say 5.
Okay.
5, 4.
It's another 8.
Mm.
Now, one more question. How many are they reading to decide if they want to start? Any best guesses?
I'm going to go middle of the pack. I'm going to go 6.
Okay.
Right on, Scott. Right on.
Hey, there we go.
So what does it mean? So we know today's student is the most experiential consumer we've ever seen. They're going to base a lot of their decisions on the experience they're having or the experience of perfect strangers or maybe people they know. That's an average of 27 reviews in deciding to continue proceeding through the admissions experience. What's interesting about that is Gen Z only reads an average of 4 reviews when they're buying a product. So this phone, they're only looking at a few reviews versus 27 when looking at investing in their education. What's your best guess at why there's such a difference there?
I think outcomes, right? That's going to be the biggest thing. Outcomes.
Yeah. Outcomes for sure. And because the outcomes being so important to them, because this investment you're asking me to make is an investment of my time, my commitment, my resources, my money, and it's an emotional sell. The phone, not so much, but you're asking me to invest in an experience that's an emotional experience and an emotional sell that means a lot more to me than buying my phone. They are going to read more reviews of other people's experiences, not just the positives, but how a school responds to the negative reviews to see how authentic the experience really is from the school. So a lot of key influencers that are driving the decisions of today's students. And should we work together, there's a lot of additional data that is utilized in training admissions professionals, training educators, as well as strategies and systems that cater and connect to the needs and mindsets of today's students based upon how they view themselves, how they view education, what really drives them, what motivates them, and what's influencing their decision making. And so I'll stop sharing my screen, but we'll say when we continue our conversation, we will focus on how do you take all that information about today's student and apply it to investments you need to make in admissions tools and engagement best practices as well. So, gentlemen, I really appreciate the conversation today.
Absolutely, Matt. That was a wealth of information about the students of of today, and then how to really connect with them. So thank you so much for that.
And I'll say this, Scott, I can't wait to get into the adding the tech and again, because you can get so much information, and we went over a lot of information that I think we'll be able to build on, but the practical on how to take that into implement it into today, I think it's going to be, so those who are still with us, which we have a whole crew of you, again, thank you again for being a part of this and staying with us all the way to the end, even though we went a little longer today. Hopefully you engage with us on our next months, because I think it's going to be, again, very practical ways on how to take all the information we've given you today and disseminate it through a tech and new way of doing it, and really shore up your admissions process.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
right.
I put my contact information on here. So if you're a school, you're a rep that wants to continue the conversation or learn more about all the solutions, services, and systems that we can offer you, both in admissions and for educators, here's my contact information. Please reach out. I'd love to connect with you and learn more about you, your school, your goals, and how we can best partner and support you in achieving those goals that you have.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Matt, thank you so much. To my co-host Danny, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Scott.
To all the audience that tuned in today, you can catch a replay of this webinar at sina.com. Just navigate in the menu to the webinars section of the site, and a replay will be available there. And when we are ready, I think, Matt, we're targeting August 30th for our next session. So if you want to pencil that into your calendars, to everyone at home today, please do so, or at the office, please do. And again, sina.com, check it out at webinars. That's where you can watch a replay of this one. And here in a couple weeks, we should have the registration up for the next event. If you are a fan of audio versions, we will be providing a podcast version of this at the SoundCloud link at the footer of sina.com as well. So Danny, Matt, thank you for your time. To all of our attendees today, really appreciate you joining us today. And Matt, we look forward to connecting again here next month.
Look forward to it, guys. Thanks for the conversation. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Since 2008, Sina Education Services has been uniting compliance and technology for the education industry. Today, Sina supports institutions of higher education, post-secondary schools, and organizations around the world to achieve their educational goals. Sina offers an array of client services in three major categories: compliance consulting, curriculum development, and EdLumina, our online education platform. Through our compliance consulting services, Sina ensures that your organization is on the right side of regulations. We assist with state licensing, the accreditation process, and even launching a new school within the U.S. We have years of regulatory experience for clients that are just starting out or have been long established. Sina also helps create what happens in the classroom, whether online, on campus, or a combination of both. Our curriculum development team produces educational content for all types of schools and educational needs. We can deliver curriculum for traditional classrooms, professional development, and even within our online immersive education platform, EdLumina. Over the years, EdLumina has grown from an admissions CRM platform designed specifically for education. Today, EdLumina also offers a student information system, an online course catalog with point of sale, and even immersive augmented and virtual reality training. But beyond the unique nature of services we offer in the education sector, it's our background, our experiences, and our relationships that set us apart from other firms. We have been involved in the education industry with every level of stakeholder, from students and faculty to school owners and regulators. At Ciena Education Services, we are advancing the power of education around the world. Visit our website, ciena.com, to see for yourself.